Hi, thanks for joining me. Recently, a number of people have asked me about my left hand or fretting hand position. And so today I just like to talk about my approach, my left hand approach, why I use this technique and why it works really well for my style of playing. So if you're interested in fingerstyle, ukulele or classical, then maybe there's some tips and tricks in this video that will help you. So the first thing I'm going to say is I know there's a lot of people who rest the neck of the ukulele between the thumb and the index finger. But I don't use this technique. I have what I would describe, I guess, as a more open hand. I like my hand to be free. That's very much a guitar thing, so it's not contacting the neck of the guitar, of the ukulele, sorry, at all. And it allows me this freedom of the fingers and freedom to move around the fingerboard. So the thing I would say is that maybe my technique is different. Different doesn't mean wrong, it just means it's different. And I think the important thing about technique is that it has to maximize efficiency while minimizing strain or injury. We all have very different hand shapes. That's important. We also play different sized ukuleles. That's another factor that can influence, the position. This is a tenor, and I think we have to take all these factors into consideration, as well as, most importantly probably, the style of music that you're playing. So as I say, I have this more open hand position, so my hand's not contacting the neck at all. There's a little bit of a gap. I don't know how much you can see. Okay, but there's a bit of a gap between the fingerboard and the hand. Now, a really good image, and one that I learned at the Royal College of Music from my professor there, is to imagine the shape the hand goes into if you were to pick up an imaginary glass of water or wine, or beer, whatever. Anyway, so the hand very naturally goes into this position, and we do this many times a day without even thinking about it. So we can learn a lot from how the hand works. And the first thing to notice is how straight the wrist is. This is really important. I mean, if you pick up a glass like this, it just, your hand feels weak. So we use the arm when we're picking up the glass, and we're going to use that. I'll demonstrate this in a bit when we apply it to the ukulele. Now, the other thing to notice is that the fingers are curved, so they're not angled. If you angle your fingers like this, like kind of scrunching the hand in, you can feel this tension already in the back of the fingers. So there's this release of tension by just curling the fingers. You can also see that the thumb is nicely relaxed, so it's not bent here. This is a big no-no. Try and avoid that, because again, if you just bend this joint, you can feel the tension, and that's going to affect your arm and your technique, and it could lead to injury, so be careful of that. And you can also see that the thumb is kind of just balanced behind the fingers if I turn on the side. So it's that kind of a position. All right, so we're going to take that basic image and apply it to the fingerboard of the ukulele. So we still have this nice curl in the fingers. Thumb is just lightly resting, so it's not doing that. Okay, just very lightly resting. My wrist is as straight as possible. Okay, I'm not pushing forward, creating an arch. Guitarists would never do this. I know the guitar has 2 extra strings, but we're able to reach the strings because of the curl in the fingers. So if your fingers were angled, you would have to do that. But with the curled fingers, then they can just curl around the fingerboard and reach the lower strings. So on the ukulele, that also, obviously, because we've got less strings, that works really nicely. The thumb. Well, everybody's thumb is a different shape, so this is a really important thing to remember. And how my hand looks is not going to be how your hand looks. All right, so there's not sort of one definitive position, shape, whatever. We have these kind of general guidelines, and then you need to work on the technique yourself with what suits your instrument, your style of playing, and your hand shape. So I'd say the thumb is behind the fingerboard, which is behind the fingerboard as opposed to in front of the fingerboard, which would be a bit crazy. And where it lands is wherever it feels comfortable. So my thumb is quite mobile. I mean, sometimes it's really high up on the neck, other times it's moves into a lower position. It depends on the piece, okay, and the notes. But generally, I just want my thumb to rest very lightly as a guide, if you like. Position marker might be a better word for my fingers, because my fingers are going to do all the work. The thumb is just there, okay? The strength in the fingers comes from the weight of the arm. So when I press the string down, I'm not squeezing. There's never this squeezing. Well, sometimes there is, but that's really bad, so try to avoid it. There is this weight of the arm. So if I take my thumb off, you can see it's very easy to sound the notes without the thumb. So the strength, if you like, is coming from the weight of the arm. And this means that my hand is really relaxed. Now you say, what about when you do a barre? Which is a good question. Let's see what happens when I do a barre. So I don't actually squeeze. And if you can see that, I would never do this, but I've taken my thumb off just to show you that I'm not squeezing with my hand. I'm, again, using the weight of the arm. And because I'm kind of pulling down into the ukulele, I'm counterbalancing with my right elbow, okay, so the instrument doesn't fly off. So that is quite a good thing to remember when you're doing a barre, because we can very easily get into the habit of just trying to squeeze really tightly, and that's just not good. It's not good for your hand. So it's quite a good little exercise. Think, oh, yeah, actually the barre works fine without any thumb. Hello. I wouldn't do that either. So that's some pointers, I think, for the left hand position. The other thing that happens is if I want to move up the fingerboard, you can see, again, if I turn on the side, it's probably easier to see. My hand moves as if there's a magnet between my thumb and somewhere around the second finger, so between the second and first finger. So if I want to move up, I don't leave the thumb behind and pull my hand out of position. I slide the two up together, so they're working together. I do release the pressure on the back of the neck. And vibrato, you know, vibrato sounds great. That's what I'm doing here with the wobble. People keep saying, what's that wobble? It works two ways. I mean, musically, it's very pleasant, but it's also almost like a technical reminder that the thumb is not really needed, and that again we use this weight in the arm and the elbow and the shoulder to contact the string, to press the string to the fingerboard. So it's not that, it's weight, not force, okay? Now let's just talk about the fingers and their position. So if I just play a D major scale, single notes, my fingers are actually quite flat, and I'm not worried if I play the second string. You can see I'm actually resting, well, I'm not resting it, but it's actually contacting the A string, my index finger. I'm not too worried about that because I know that the notes are on the second string. Okay, we'll just finish that scale. So that changes if I want to play campanella. So if I want to do the same scale as a campanella scale, which means I want the strings to be ringing on as much as possible, and I'm moving the notes across the strings. So you see there, sorry, it's a bit of a squeak, I'm nervous, but I didn't want to, when I played the A, and then when I played the B, I wanted to keep the A ringing on. So that's it ringing on. I was very mindful of not letting my third finger touch the A string like this, which stops the sound. Okay, so the shape of the hand, whether the fingers are kind of like on point, if you like, or more relaxed, depends on the effect you want. So if you want campanella, then they're a little bit more on the tips. Okay, so you can see there. Whereas when I played the linear scale, I wasn't too worried if the fingers were quite flat. So there's always these kind of, it's very organic, there's always these kind of subtle movements and changes going on depending on the piece, the sound you want to evoke. Do you want notes to ring on? Do you want to dampen them? You know, that's with the, if I didn't want that E to ring on, then when I play the D, I've just flattened the finger so that it's damped, the E string. That's quite a good technique, trick to use. What else? I don't know. That's about it, really. It's just, I think, really important to think about technique. It's almost like molding your hand to the fingerboard, okay? And it works very much with the music, the sounds you want to evoke, okay? The other thing I'd like to say before I go is this happens especially with the ukulele. Sometimes you do need to make a little bit of space for yourself. All right, so the G chord's quite a good example. You can see that I'm not completely straight on to the fingerboard. I've given myself a bit of room. And then if I wanted to go to an E minor chord from there, I can just transfer the chord to an E minor by popping down the pinky finger. But you will notice that I'm kind of swiveling, well, not kind of, I am swiveling, to allow myself room. I also release the index finger so my hand is not pulling in two different ways. So these, I'll just exaggerate that a bit. There's a bit of movement going on. That's exaggerated so you can see it on the video. Allowing the hand to move so that you're not like straining or pressuring the fingers into weird shapes. Okay, so there are subtle interplays of holding down and releasing, and it's all related to the technique. So it's a big topic. It's, you know, it's not going to be covered in one video, but I just wanted you to get a sense of this slightly more open-handed position. So rather than supporting the neck with the hand, to free up the hand so it's not supporting the neck, and give yourself like more space. Make the fingers more curled. Ensure that the wrist is straight and the thumb is also relaxed. Now, because I'm not supporting the neck, I've got a strap, and it works very nicely for me to have the strap button under the heel, just here, as you can see, and then the other one, of course, is here. That means that my ukulele is balanced, it's supported, it feels very secure without gripping with my hand. Okay, that's what I like about the strap. And I know that a lot of people get really emotional about the strap, but really, can we all get over ourselves? Do whatever works for you. If you can play without a strap, good for you. But if you want to use a strap, just use it. I mean, really, who cares? I'll be in trouble. There's going to be lots of comments. I feel it. So yeah, the beauty of the strap is that this hand now feels really free to move. And I think coming from the guitar, it felt weird that the ukulele was unsupported, because obviously with the guitar we support the instrument with our legs. And it's quite difficult to do that unless you play baritone. Quite like using a kind of classical guitar stance, if you like, for the baritone. So I use a footstool, you can't see that here, rather than a strap. And that works really well because my legs can support the instrument, which is a good posture. But the strap works as well. So important things: posture, being relaxed, being happy about what you're doing. That's all that matters, isn't it? So yeah, I think I've covered everything, but if you have any questions, do put them in the comments and I'll endeavour to answer them. And I just finish up by saying that if my technique is different from other ukulele players, that's fine. Different doesn't mean wrong or bad, it just means different. And you know, if you watch some of my videos, I think you can see that my fretting hand is quite efficient and works pretty well. So I'm happy with this technique, and feel free to explore yourself and try these different things. Find what works for you and for your hand and for your style and your ukulele. But have fun.